What's up, everybody? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the Odd Shopper channel. And today we're here to talk about some college basketball bets ahead of Tuesday, February the 7th. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. If you're listening on podcast, please leave a rating and review over there as well. It helps us a ton. And we are brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. They have a phenomenal offer for you guys, available for just a limited time. Right now, you can make a $5 wager on any game, any team of your choosing, and whether that wins or loses, you are going to be paid out $200 in the form of free bets. You can take advantage of this by clicking the link in the video description below, heading to DraftKings Sportsbook, and making your first deposit of at least $5, then making that wager. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, we'll dive into today's games. Producer behind the scenes, Chris, did not like my face on video for 10 full minutes, so we've got some fancy graphics for you guys. So thank you, Chris, for making these. We're going to kick things off with Marquette taking on UConn. These graphics might change. I don't know. They're pretty basic right now. Regardless, we'll be backing Marquette's plus 4.5 here. They hit the road. This is actually a rematch of a game that was played previously on January 11th, and Marquette won 82-76. This, of course, was in Milwaukee. But it's a really fun matchup between these teams. The only real injury is Sean Jones, who hasn't played in the last 3 games due to a wrist injury from Marquette. But UConn fairly healthy in this spot. And both these teams are pretty evenly matched. Overall on KenPom, Marquette is 8th, UConn is 6th. Strength of schedule is 36th and 38th apiece. So two teams pretty evenly matched so far here. Marquette hits the road, of course. And just to dive into the stylistics of these teams, for UConn, this was actually Donovan Clingan's best game of the year when they first matched up. And he's 7'2" in terms of height. Takes advantage of a Marquette team, which is not very tall. Marquette's actually 112th in effective height. UConn is 60th. But so much of that depends on Donovan Clingan's minutes because he is 7'2". And when he's not on the floor, they play Adama Sanogo at the 5, who's 6'9". When Sanogo's out there, they actually don't have a massive height advantage overall. So some of the things you're seeing on the screen, like rebounding, Marquette 300th, UConn 20th, a lot of that depends on personnel. So some of the advantages UConn has, I actually don't think are quite as impressive as what you might see. And we saw that in the first game. Shaka's plan against Clingan actually was to get him in space and move him around and kind of cook him off the bounce and try to use movement to take advantage of Clingan. Now, Marquette kind of got away from themselves at times and were using drives from like Cam Jones and Tyler Kolek going right into Clingan, which resulted in some blocks. But as long as they stay true to their game plan, I'm not sure Clingan being on the floor is actually a positive for UConn due to his youth, really, at this point. And then one of the other biggest mismatches in this game is Marquette's turnovers. Their turnovers force, that is. They're awesome at forcing turnovers, and UConn is awful at turnovers committed. UConn turned it over 16 times in the first matchup. Now, a lot of those came from Adama Sanogo, who isn't necessarily the cleanest with the ball, regardless. So I don't think that necessarily changes. But you also don't really have like a true point guard for this team, at least one in terms of turnovers committed. So that's a massive mismatch for Marquette, and it's going to be really in every game they play. All this to say, it's a lot of points. I think there's a pretty good chance that UConn wins the game, but overall, we'll be taking the points with Marquette at plus 4.5. I think this is one you can comfortably bet right now. Second game, Big 12, TCU, Kansas State. A lot of the efficiency metrics you're seeing on the screen right now, and again, we're just using some of the most basic stats to make this video a little easier to follow. What you're not seeing is the injuries in this game, and they're mainly on the TCU side. There's a couple massive ones. Mike Miles and Eddie Lampkin are both injured for TCU, and this team has really faltered since then. So overall, you have Kansas State 26th at KenPom. TCU is 17th. But I think what you're seeing in the line movement here, which is Kansas State minus 4.5, minus 5 in some spots, largely coming down to injury. Mike Miles, their point guard, he hyperextended his knee in their third most recent game. He hasn't played since. Eddie Lampkin sprained his ankle in their fourth most recent game. He tried to return 2 games ago, could only play 8 minutes, and then had to sit out the subsequent game. Eddie Lampkin's the only guy that gives this team like real legitimate size. They have a couple other players that get a handful of minutes here and there per game. But when they don't have Eddie Lampkin on the floor, this team does not have a ton of size, which is a problem against Kansas State, who actually is getting healthier with David and Gesson back. Now, he's a guy that's going to play about 20 minutes or so for you. But all this matters. When you go from Lampkin down to Cork or Jacoby Coles, that's a couple inches in height you're seating. Lampkin's 6'11", Coles is 6'7", Cork is 6'9". Without Mike Miles, you are seeding some turnovers. Like Damian Baugh when he plays the one, Shahada Wells when they play the one, these players have worse turnover rates than Mike Miles. So all this really does matter for TCU when they're facing a Kansas State team, which is awesome. And this is a rematch as well. In the first game, TCU won 82-68. I'd like to point out that Mike Miles had a double-double, 13 points, 11 assists, and Eddie Lampkin cooked them inside, had 17 points himself. Now, it's still a good team. Damian Baugh and Emmanuel Miller are awesome players. Micah Peavy can give you pretty good minutes. But ultimately, we've seen this team falter quite a bit down the stretch without them. They've lost 2 of their last 3. They lost in overtime to Mississippi State. Just lost by 6 to Oklahoma State without Avery Anderson, arguably their best player. So it's been rough out here in these streets. Right now, Kansas State minus 4.5. I would expect this one to continue moving throughout the day unless we get the news that Mike Miles or Lampkin are going to play. Again, I do not expect that to happen. Last one here. We're going to head over to the ACC, where we will take the points with NC State against Virginia. It is plus 7.5 right now. These teams actually aren't too far apart in the overall rankings. NC State's 47th, Virginia's 15th. That makes a lot of sense. NC State's played way more games. But this NC State team has been hurt most of the year. Jack Clark and Dusan Mahorcic have both been out since December. News on them suggests they're going to return soon. I would be surprised if it's today, just to be honest with you. But you look at how these teams are composed. You actually have an NC State team which matches up fairly well against Virginia. And then, of course, anytime we're getting a bunch of points against Virginia, that's going to interest me because of their pace. You can see on the screen, possessions per game, Virginia is one of the slowest teams in the country. NC State tries to play fast, but generally teams end up playing down to Virginia's pace versus that going the other direction. So right away, Virginia's awesome at shooting threes, but NC State actually defends them well. You look at this across three-point percentage. Right now, Virginia is 18th in the country at shooting threes, three-point percentage-wise. And then NC State is actually 44th at defending them, which is really good. And vice versa, NC State's pretty good at shooting threes themselves. They rank 71st in three-point attempts per game. They're 117th in three-point percentage. And Virginia is 201st in three-point defense. Not to mention rebounding suits NC State. They're 45th. Virginia's 272. They don't really truly have a strong big man. They're a team that plays largely through their guards. And Virginia's strong on interior defense. That's not where NC State wins anyway. So I think points are going to be valuable here, and we can get quite a bit of them with NC State in what should be a slower game against Virginia. So we'll take 7.5 with NC State. Let me know what you guys think about these games in the comment section or any others you are backing on this Tuesday. Hit the thumbs up button, subscribe on the way out, and thanks to the Odd Shopper channel. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Matt_Kajeski, always willing to chop up some college basketball and sports in general. Until tomorrow, we'll see you guys then. Good luck, everyone.